Next we're going to talk about subtracting integers. And the cool thing is that most of the time it's exactly the same as adding a negative. Now a question came up during our pre-assessment about minus sign, or is that a negative sign? Typically the minus sign is kind of a little bit lower, it's in the middle of the numbers, and the negative sign is a little higher. And I just want to kind of emphasize that a minus sign and a negative sign mean exactly the same thing. If I'm taking in negative money, I'm going to be subtracting that or minusing that from my bank account. So while I go through these examples, you're going to notice something that I do not do. I do not change everything to adding a negative. I have a reason for that. The reason for that is when you go into Algebra 1, it is going to make things way more complicated if all you ever do is say plus negative, plus negative, plus negative, because you are going to have equations and expressions that could be 10 digits long. So I'm going to show you a different way. Now if you remember what you did last year and you are more comfortable with adding a negative, I will not mark you wrong. It's the same thing. I'm just trying to get us to the Algebra 1 level so that we're ready for that next year. So, like I said, it's really no different than adding. And no, it's a little bit hard to see on here, so I'm going to slide this over. Remember that the sign in front stays with the number. Let me show you what I mean. This is minus 10, or it's negative 10. We need to think about them the same way. When I do that, I just get to apply what we learned yesterday. Who's the winner? So the blue team has 6. The red team has 10, because remember, minus 10, negative 10, same thing. So who's the winner? Who has the greater absolute value? And the answer is the negative team. They do. Notice I'm not color coding today. At this point we should be able to just see who's the winner. By how much? Negative team has 10, positive team has 6. That means that the negative team has 4 more points. Because it's negative team, because it's 4, the solution is negative 4. So before I move on, just so you can see, I did not rewrite this expression as 6 plus negative 10. Like I said, I honestly think this is a bit easier. You just have to remember that minus and negative mean the same thing. Same thing. You'll hear me say that probably too many times this year. Example 2. We want to make sure we keep the sign in front. So this is a negative 14. Even though, notice how it's typed here, doesn't matter where it is. If it's in front of the number, it's got to hang out by that number, except for in one case we're going to see next. We have a minus 16. Between those two, who's the winner? Well, they're on the same team. They're both negative. So, because they're on the same team, we just total up their points. If they put up 14 points and then 16 points, it's 30 points. Negative 30, negative 30. So with these first two examples, hopefully you can see it's really no different than what we did yesterday. The only difference is that we're looking at a minus sign to be equivalent to a negative sign. Now in class tomorrow, I'm going to show you mathematically why what I tell you here is true. I'm going to totally prove it to you and all that kind of stuff. But for right now, I want to go over what a minus and a negative means. When you see a minus and a negative together, they're going to cancel each other out to become a positive. So this isn't really a 14 and a negative 14. It's a 14 and a 14 because these two signs turn into positive. So if that's the case, let me zoom out of this for a sec. If that's the case, these are both positive, positive, and let me zoom back in. So those are both positive. If they're both positive, then I can find the winner is going to be positive. That's all we've got. When it says by how much, they're on the same team. So my answer is going to be 28. Same thing is going to happen here. A minus and a minus is going to be a positive. And like I said, I'm going to explain mathematically why in class. I'd rather explain that in person. So if this is positive, this is a negative 95. This is a positive 95. Who wins? Nobody, because it's a tie. So by how much did they win? 0. So the solution is 0. Just like yesterday, I've got 2 problems I'd like you to try just to see if you understand what we learned. So the first one is pretty straightforward. It's just like the first 2 examples. And the last one is a little bit of all of the examples. We will check these tomorrow on the warm-up.